Hey.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, good to
Um,
be back.
how's the last couple months been? Just working on Dwarf Fortress and things.
Yeah, and I mean it all flows together. I mean the military stuff must have been sometime in the last couple of months. The what else do we do? We kind of spent quite a bit of time on that. And most recently we've been working on the Embark Screen, which is fun. Not the like the one we showed way back at the very beginning was like the first thing we worked on was doing like items and animals and picking skills for your dwarves. That part, the prepare carefully part. But yeah, most recently we've been working in on kind of the map part with the notorious rectangles and things. Like how you use what is it? What are the keys we use? Like U, H, K, and M or
Yeah,
something to
UMKH and then
resize.
capital
Yeah,
UMKH.
yeah. That's like the most notorious thing I've ever done, I think, right? That was like the just scandalous.
I think that's a
Um,
screen most people don't make it past, actually.
yeah. So we're gonna retain our player base now. It's gonna be great. Because you just we actually managed. We didn't know if we'd be able to manage it or not, but you can actually just click on the world. You have a world map. You can scroll it around, and then you can click and zoom in to like the adventure travel mode level,
Mhm.
and then just scroll that around too. Whole thing. Just scroll it, and then pick your spot. And it's got hover that tells you what things are. None of those weird like F keys to choose your bio and stuff like that. Like all the strangeness of the screen is kind of evaporated away, and it's like a strategy game now.
Yeah.
You just have a map you scroll around on and pick where you want to embark, and it gives you like information about your neighbors. You can still pick your civilization, still do the site finder and all that stuff, but it's all just kind of graphical and clicky and nice and modern feeling. But yeah, we're still working on that. But so far so good. And so yeah, I think it was a good couple of months for menus and things and making like real progress toward getting this thing done.
I'm trying to like load up a world in the background so I can show that screen and I'm stuck in the calendar screen.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Did you do a big one or something?
I wasn't sure how old the world was, but apparently we're
Calendar's
in year
so slow.
393,
Yeah,
so yeah, it's
yeah.
just
If you're like
it's
large world with 2,000 sites and it's like click,
chugging along.
click, click. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be really hard to improve on that. There's just going to have to be some warnings for people or something. It's like, by the way,
By the way,
or
this
we can
might
show
take
them
a
what's
little
happening or
bit.
something. I mean, that'd be the ideal thing, right? Would be like, if I can't speed up the calendar, then we just need to put a little pop-up window that's like, the war is raging in the south or whatever, and
Just like a
or
little news ticker
whatever's
at the
going on.
bottom. Kind of like,
Yeah, something like that. Anything.
how old Sim City had like the scrolling line of it's like broccoli is invading, and like all
Yeah,
these
I don't
little
even.
news
I
bits.
mean, I don't know why there isn't like a world map showing. I mean, we could just show a world map. I think it's because sometimes the calendar is fast, right? It just goes, "Whoop," and then you're done. And then sometimes the calendar takes, a minute, and then you're not done.
Yeah, I've made it to the triple screens. Like the hotkeys here are capital R to reclaim, E to embark, tab to change mode, which I didn't find for like the first year of playing this game. And then you got UMKH, capital UMKH, and then N for notes, which I don't think I've ever actually used.
Oh yeah. We might not actually have that. We were also thinking like, I mean, maybe someone can tell me, like, or you could, or someone out there could tell me, like, does anyone use notes ever? Because
Chat,
I could just not. We could just not have that. It's
chat,
really, yeah.
chat to probably tell us right now. Does anybody here use notes?
Because it was kind of cumbersome to throw in to the new version, just because it's a weird thing that it felt like what are we doing? Um, but no, it's not impossible or even hard to throw in there if anyone actually relies on notes. Having like I make a systemic look through the world and pick 20 spots and write notes about them. Then we can honor and respect that
Yeah.
and have and keep it around. But yeah, it's such a strange like those the tab modes and stuff. All of that is just part of the hover now, or it's got um like the elevation part, like the elevation in the cliffs. Where that just is like it changes the left side window to show like the cliff thing. Now, when you're zoomed in, you can just turn on a little cliff and elevation button setting, and it changes the whole map to a giant elevation map and you can still scroll around it and stuff. And we also have the cliff thing the same way. Um, just for people that like a steep fort or a flat fort, it seems like a handy thing.
Just find the waterfall with the volcano and half evil biome, half good biome, and then you're pretty much good to go. Yeah. Just get everything
Yeah,
all at once.
Yeah, it's still slow to do a search of like a large world, how it has to kind of chug through all the little blocks and stuff. I'm not sure we'll be able to improve on that much. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what most people do. Do most people just like wait for the first match and then stop it and then just always embark in the west half of the world or something? Um,
I think everybody kind of does it differently. At least for me, I usually go in with like a specific idea in mind, like I'm trying to find something specific, and then I search for it, and then either find it or I don't. Like I've been trying to find stranglers, so every time I do a new fortress, I find an evil jungle in it. No luck so far, but
yeah, yeah. At least that'll kind of show up on the map before you even like have to use the site finder.
yeah.
It's like a big old purple jungle or whatever.
So it's relatively easy to find the jungles. The problem is finding stranglers in the jungles
Yeah,
once you're there.
yeah. Well, that we haven't changed. We don't have like a kind of Safari window that pops up and shows like here are the different animals that are in this area. Um, Still, the only hint you get is like after you've embarked, it gives you one predator that might kill your people before winter comes or whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of selected out of the available predators in the area. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a. There's so much information; it's hard to know if we should prioritize anything else. But um,
A lot to be done. But the first user question I have on this very long document in front of me is what is your favorite addition to the Steam release so far? It comes in from Casey.
So yeah, something all new.
Change or addition? I don't know. I think it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything that isn't the stuff I was just working on because I'm like, wow, that military screen is so much nicer.
I mean, it is.
I know it's like hard to find some like what is going to compare with that, right? It's like I mean, I really like the thing that the kind of a lot of people took for granted because they were using the mods and stuff, but just the I mean the Z level thing you can't fault being able to see multiple levels. That's really cool. And that's just not a vanilla thing, right? So they have to have a shout out for those levels. Let's see what isn't like I like and of course I like the river animations and stuff, but is there anything else that isn't just like because things like work orders now are going to be way easier for people to use. Like there's stuff that's just exposed now. I think that's generally the thing that I like the most about it. It's just that like there are features, like you were saying with the tab button that you didn't know was there. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a lot harder now to miss things, right? It's going to be pretty obvious that there are an awful lot of things that you can do that you wouldn't have seen before, and I think that's definitely a thing. Although in the spirit of the question, I probably should think of something more narrowed down and interesting, but it's escaping me.
I could throw out my favorite addition, the mini map.
Oh yeah, I love the mini map. I mean, because it's another one where it's like, what was that old mini map for exactly?
You kind of look at it, it's like it's a bunch of squares. I
mean, it's like it lets you know that it's an ASCII game.
Yeah.
It's an ASCII game trying to be something more than it can be. But the new mini map, yeah, I mean, it's pixel perfect. It's you can see every little hallway, every passageway in your fortress just laid out absolutely perfectly in the grid, and yeah, I really like that. It kind of it's like the things that are kind of feel hidden in the old version, like how you can export the detailed map, like the pixel map of the world. And I mean, it took us a little while to kind of realize it's like, oh, we could just use pixels now, you know. And the mini map was like the first realization of that, the first like actual realization of that. And we haven't like the new it's something that we were thinking about doing, we just haven't really done it yet, but in like the new Embark screen is like, should we have a little pixelated world map that shows where you are? It hasn't felt necessary, like even on a large world, because on a 1920 by 1080 monitor, like even a large world's only kind of 4 screens across. Mm-hmm. So not when you zoom in. Once you zoom in, then it's suddenly like 64 screens across. But when you before you zoom in, so you kind of have a sense of where you are, especially because of the polar stuff. that it didn't feel strictly necessary. Although it's kind of cool. It's like those cloth maps that came with the Ultimas, right? You kind of have this. It'd be cool to have a little map, I suppose. Kind of get that sense of what your world looks like.
Be easier for people to draw them too.
It's good stuff.
So
It's good stuff.
the next question I have on this list is comes in from Anonymous, and it is: will any adjustments be made to stockpile menus in regards to the way items are categorized? Currently, a handful of items and categories are ambiguous, such as corpses versus refuse, and some items are impossible to specify, such as the finished goods in the tools category.
Oh yeah, that part's terrible. So yeah, I mean we finished our first pass on it. And I don't like how certain of the things are. And it's a little worse too in the stock screen, I think, is even a little more annoying the way some of the categories work. So like we have a few notes on that. I think continuous suggestions on that'll be welcome. I'm not sure what we're gonna get to now on the first release, since we're still, I mean, we just have to get things done that haven't been touched yet. But we're going to keep working on things like that, and we have made some changes here and there to, I don't remember what it was. There was one big one in the stockpiles that we did, like some category that was totally terrible before, and you can specify it now. Anyway, so yeah, and we're still looking out for those, and there's possible we'll see a little bit more, especially after. When we do our pass on bugs, and more bugs.
There's always bugs, but some of them become features eventually, so not all bad.
There's some winners still though. But yeah.
The next question I have comes in from Urist, very unique name.
No.
And they ask, is ignore labor assignment and prioritize dwarves need to crafting and workshop profile menu will be added in upcoming release? I think what they're asking is, will it be easier to like define labor assignments because they have?
So I mean, it's way different now, right? Because we have the kind of automatic labor. There's the automatic labor default. There's the specialization button. There's the workshop profiles, which are kind of more fronted than they used to be. And then there's the work details. And between all of those things, you can kind of do what you want. And I'm not sure what their specific question was, of course, but you can pretty much easily set up the things that you want, because the old VPL system, which we didn't want anyone to have to ever experience again, is still there, right? It's still there, and it's kind of within the custom work details. You can do what you like along those lines. It's not a dwarf therapist system. Like, the spreadsheet is just too big compared to like comparable games that have used that, like RimWorld and Prison Architect and things that have kind of a smaller spreadsheet and generally a smaller number of people. Although I don't know how many prisoners. You can have quite a few prisoners, but I don't know how many guards. Anyway, but it's just not. It still didn't feel feasible to go with that kind of system. But you can get there. Although I'd need to know kind of specifically what they wanted to do. And we're now that we have this kind of labor screen with some easy to use settings and so forth. And the fact that VPL can't sit there and kill your fort like it used to be able to by jobs not getting done. We're again open to further refinements, and we're going to be doing more once we get some feedback and stuff. I'm not sure what it would be called, like an additional system on top of this that would. I really need to know what people want to do, because when we went through the suggestions, and when we went through, like, we even did this. I don't remember if it was you or somebody else. We talked or maybe it was Clinidev over at Reddit. We went really kind of specifically through a lot of user input about what they use. Both mods like Dwarf Therapist and also stuff like the old VPL system. Like, what were the use cases? What were they doing it for? And it felt like we captured them all. if I recollect,
Mm.
with the new systems. Like you can do all the things that they did in the new system. Um, and if there are failures in that regard, I think we can capture them without needing to go to a spreadsheet. I think we're in good shape. But yeah, we'll see.
I do know that one of the
Um,
most popular mods for RimWorld adds more labor options. Like it literally just makes that spreadsheet bigger and makes it take up the entire screen, which I think is actually kind of hilarious. But I mean, I think that there will always be people that want that minutia of just the spreadsheet, right? Like the therapist option. I think that those people will always exist. But like I manage forts of 200 plus dwarves with the individual dwarf selecting stuff, and I mean, it's a bit tedious and fiddly, but it works. And
I, I,
I think
and I
that
think
go on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry for interrupting. Yeah, there's two additional things. It's like within X number of minutes, like we're gonna have a mod that has the spreadsheet again, right?
Mhm.
And then also, like, we're not opposed to having it as long as it's buried where new people can't find
Yeah,
it. It's like, so
absolutely.
if we end up supporting something like that because we can't capture what people want to do, or if it's too fiddly to use custom work details to set up some kind of VPL situation that people used to do with the spreadsheet, I mean, we may be flexible on that as long as it's not, yeah, just kind of the. I mean, the reasons we have against it are practical, aesthetic. It's not unlike the key cluster. It's kind of feels bouncy, right?
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
like it's
it definitely like I know that the spreadsheet can certainly be overwhelming, but I think at the point where we are at with games, there is enough games that are built around the whole concept of a spreadsheet that I think people are more open to the idea these days instead of just being immediately scared away from it, less so than the UMKH, which is kind of scary.
well, like, yeah. I mean, well, it's a keyboard. First of all, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
well,
that's
that's
that's a
that's
terrifying
dangerous.
thing. For the last 30 years, the keyboard has been frightening, and we're finally catching up. But yeah, it still feels like it's a a subgenre of people or a subgroup of people that are going to be like, you know, database is what I wanted to do when I went to play games today or whatever.
Yeah.
And that if people were interested in a more Simsy type experience where they get to have the happy story of the dwarves and stuff. Although for all I know, Sims has a giant database. I haven't played for a long time. I mean, does it have a giant spreadsheet in Sims now?
I haven't played Sims since The Sims, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah, that's where
I
I'm
haven't
at.
played
So
Sims since
like,
like
so I don't know
2002.
if like Sims 4 has a hidden like giant database. I mean, not, I keep saying database, different giant spreadsheet with the relationships or the personality stuff.
I'm not totally
But
sure.
yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be the way to go. But our feelings could be completely wrong about this kind of thing. But
I will shout out a game called Songs of Six, which is literally like if someone took like the ideas behind like RimWorld and some ideas from Dwarf Fortress and just made it the most spreadsheets, because like it's like okay, imagine kind of like Dwarf Fortress, but you have 10,000 people.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
that game is crazy.
I've seen it in like on Steam, and I've seen the kind of yeah, I just saw like the battle video of like a billion people running toward each other.
Yeah.
And then I saw this article in, I don't remember what gaming site or blog or wherever, that was just about someone made giant blue people like the upper class of their city, and then they kind of had the other people subordinate to the giant blue people, something like that.
Mhm. Basically.
So
It's a strange game in its own way, but it's also neat.
yeah,
Um,
no, it's cool to see stuff like that.
so the next question comes in from Casey Bolin, and they say, any updates on the world map and accompanying interface? So I'm assuming they mean like the overworld map where you raid and do missions and stuff.
Ah, yes, the one of the so we finished the military screen and felt like, okay, we are over the hump on dwarf mode, right? Because that's the one. But then, of course, the C screen is sitting there lingering. Like, it's a messy little screen, and it has like those. like it's like a flight simulator when you get your mission report back, right? That's kind of where we were thinking when we put it in the game. When you send your squad out and then it shows their little footprints moving around the map and gives you, and there's that, and there's the various menus when you pick your raid options and that kind of thing. And then there's the news that you get from like diplomats. Like sometimes, like a lot of times, the diplomat will come and be like, "The world's the same as ever." But then other times there's like, here are 900 things that happen in the world or whatever, right? And then you'll have all these news blinkers on the C screen, and so it's one of the ones that's sitting there. I mean, there are not too many left, right? There's the C screen, there's the minecart hauling interface we haven't done anything with yet, and then there's some tabs left over, like a lot of the unit sheet tabs. We were kind of waiting for the game to be further along to figure out what to put in them, right? To like be able to zoom to the right screens and zoom to the right information. It didn't make sense to do them early. And but that's not, I mean, there's not too much left there. And then there's of course the Legends mode, adventure mode, stuff like that. But stuff that we're doing later. And but C screen's in fort mode. So yeah, I mean, we'll be there soon. We're getting this just more for the interests of getting like so Kitfox people can play with the game more. We're doing like that. Like I mentioned, we were just working on the Embark stuff, and then we're going to be doing the title screen and the save structure, like the making it so it doesn't put all of the graphics in every single save file, which is like deeply silly now. It's just like it increases their size by quite a bit now that there's more graphics, right? And it's also kind of, yeah, it's just not sensible. So we need to kind of rewrite the whole mod format, so that, I don't know. I mean, I have to survey some other games to figure out, because I know a lot of them just have like, you put a zip file into a mod folder and it just kind of was like, okay, now that's a mod. And I mean, that seems straightforward enough, other than not having I don't have a regular zip library, but I'm sure I can find one. But just kind of pops it open and says like, okay, I've got a unique identifier and I have this list of dependencies and this list of like mods I don't play nice with or whatever. And I guess that just builds up in the community. Like, this identifier is claimed by this modder and they don't work with these 7 mods. And I mean, I've seen with like, various games, there's this ongoing discussion in modding communities about what works with what and trying to make things interoperable and all that kind of thing. And for my part, I just need to make it so that the mods are easy to use and easy to identify. And that's part of what I'm going to be doing pretty soon when I restructure those saves, because it's all kind of part of the same thing. And yeah, I've ranged quite a long way from the question, but in terms of the C screen, we haven't thought about it too much because it's off ahead, but we've got the new world map look, right? So that'll just glue right in. You've seen it already, you guys, from the World Gen. I think we showed a World Gen. We must have shown a World Gen screen previously, which is not the finished World Gen, obviously, but I think we showed some of that. But so we have that. That's the hard part, is getting that stuff displayed, and then the time-consuming part is doing all the menus.
I feel like I can already imagine what the menus would look like based on the general design you have for the rest of the Steam version thus far. So
yeah. I don't think it's like, I mean, you plunk down a world map and then you stick some stuff on top of it, right? I mean,
some buttons that are clickable instead of weird, scary letters, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't need your entire like interface set up like that.
I can't wait.
I mean, obviously, hotkeys are important, and what do people do these days? Hide them in the hover. They don't tell you to go read the manual anymore, but they must just be hidden in the hover mostly.
Yeah,
or you have to, or they're hidden in the key bindings menu, which seems kind of rude. If you want to know how to open your journal in an RPG, sometimes you have to go to the rebindings to find how.
It took me 3 streams of Caves of Qud doing nothing but reading keybinds and rebinding things and constantly checking the keybinds to figure out how to play that game. So.
Yeah, I just got it since they did the Palladium Reef and so forth. And I was like, I haven't even done Tomb of the Eaters, right? And so I had stopped it way. I mean, I last time I had played it was right before they added the fungal forest, and so I was way behind. And then I finally was like, I've got to go download the new thing. And so I played through on the role playing mode because I only have so much time and I wanted to see the new stuff. And so I went through and won it, which isn't saying much on role playing mode, but I got to see all the new stuff and it was awesome. People should go play Caves of Qud.
The next question that I have here is now with the ad for Caves of Qud out of the way.
Yes.
The next question that I have here comes in from Anonymous, and they say, will there be a guide in game or some sort of tutorial for Dwarf Fortress mode that has a step-by-step approach to building a basic fortress and maybe also explains how to use certain systems like trading?
Yeah, so that's the idea, and we've gone back and forth so many times about the question of like, do you need like a tutorial world, or is it, basically the tension is between a tutorial world where we can set up really specific instructions and everyone can understand them, but that also being like completely counter to the whole point of the game, right? And having a world that you play in and then it moves on, and you'd be kind of wasting your first fortress in some dead zone, and everyone would have the same experience. It'd be kind of annoying, but you could have clear instructions versus a more soft guide that can detect features about your fortress or kind of say like, well, here's how to cut down a tree if you have any. I mean, the person embarked on a glacier. Like, if a person embarks on a flat glacier, what does the tutorial do? It's like, may you dig down. Here's how to. Your first tutorial will be how to dig 3D stairs, and how to move the camera and dig down, and then your dwarves are probably going to die of thirst. So embark somewhere else next time. It's a difficult problem, but we are not going to release it without something. So there will be, guidance to get you through the basic features of the game. You will know how to dig. You will know how to chop. You will know how to trade. You will know how to move the camera up and down. You will know how to do labor stuffs with your little laboring dwarves, give them zones, bedrooms, that kind of thing, the important stuff. Know how to eat, farm, know how to get them all drinking. And we're gonna do it somehow. We go back and forth on what that means. But it's coming pretty soon. It's going to be, I suspect we'll start working on that stuff once the kind of C-screen and hauling stuff is nailed down. We kind of have dwarf mode nailed, because you don't want to do it before you have dwarf mode nailed down, because then your instructions will change, right? But once dwarf mode is nailed down, probably before we even start on things like adventure mode, we're going to get the tutorialization started.
I'm not going to lie, I would pay a silly amount of money for an official Dwarf Fortress manual. But
yeah, we have the Getting Started with Dwarf Fortress O'Reilly book. That's a big old book.
Yeah.
And took a lot of work to do, and we'd be in the same position. Have to figure out how to do that, but hopefully it exists within the game enough, kind of content sensitive menus, and being able to click the little help button and having some stuff pop up. Isn't that nice? And then people sitting down and reading a nice book. It wasn't a feeling. It was a nice feeling from the old days. Now the books just tell you, like, give you seizure warnings and stuff in different languages, I think. Mostly when they got smaller and smaller, right? I remember buying, like, console games in the plastic boxes, and then the manuals getting smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually they were just kind of a fold-out, like, little two-page pamphlet.
I would like to inform you that chat is saying that you guys need to go to Limited Run and get an official release. Good guys over at Limited Run.
Yeah, I only vaguely know what that is because I'm
an
old
PAX.
stir.
They're usually at PAX, but
yeah, well, I never get a chance to wander around PAX rather than just sitting there hawking my wares.
Yeah.
Somebody else's wares.
The next question here comes in from Costlord, and they say, will modders get some preview access to the Steam version early to update mods?
Yeah, that question had been floating around a bit. And like, there's no real problem, I suspect, with just releasing the object. I mean, I haven't thought about this, so I'm not going to commit to this, but I don't see a problem right now with just, like, once we're far enough along that we know everything's fixed and we're getting there, we can just throw up the entire objects folder, right? I mean, it's not changed that much, and it's already public domain, right? And it's going to remain that way. So like there's in terms of format changes, there's been a few format changes, and then there's the graphical the graphics format, which isn't very complicated, and it's not too changed from what it used to be. There's just a shoot load of more identifiers. I don't remember the language requirements of your stream, so
you can say whatever. It's all good.
Okay, yeah. So, but anyway, there's quite a few. Identifiers, right? Thousands of identifiers for, evil, wild, grassland variant 3,
yeah.
and friends, quite a few there, especially the format for the dwarf. The dwarf used to be here's a dwarf tile, and maybe it has is it a undead child, or is it a baron, or is it a miner or something, would enter into the into the modding. But now it's there are layers. A dwarf is made up of 30 layers, and they get turned off and on based on all kinds of conditions, like if they're holding a weapon, or what their profession is, or what hairstyle they have. It has to turn on this. This is double braided beard dwarf. The mysterious double braided beard, which is what does it mean? The beard is in double braids. It's we just typed that in there without knowing what we were talking about, and now it's got an interpretation artistically. So you have those things that turn on and off, and that kind of thing. I mean, it would be cool if people had a little bit of advance notice, but of course the game itself, we're not going to release the graphics pack, of course. That's kind of the whole idea here, is to hide the graphics and the music behind the scary paywall. And but I mean, modders are experienced enough that I think they know what's going on, right? They know what all this stuff is, and of course, it's no problem talking about it. Yeah, I mean, as people continue to remind me, as we get closer, I don't think it'll be hard to come to an arrangement there.
While my chat does their best to shut my brain off entirely, there's a question from a Dwarf Fortress fan, and they ask, will trees have shadows so that we can tell we are in a forest?
Oh, well, the thing was, and you may have noticed this in some of the earlier screenshots, the trees had shadows, and then they came at some point quietly to not have shadows. And I believe, gosh, it's going to be hard to remember, but I believe it had something to do with the grass edging or something I was working on, how the grass worked over the side of ramps, or some mysterious thing where I had to comment out all the tree shadows. I was okay, I have to restructure the bit fields so that the tree shadows can come back. And now that's just on the to-do list. I have the tree shadows sitting there, ready to come back, and I just need to spend a day on something, and just haven't done it yet. But yeah, there were tree shadows. You can probably find them in old screenshots, and there will be tree shadows again.
Well, that's a relief to hear that shadows will be coming back to trees. Wow, Chad is doing a very good job of completely obliterating my ability to think right now.
Is it blasting through like a Twitch, one of those Twitch streams with 20,000 people in it, and there's just ASCII art shooting by and stuff?
Not quite. No, it's more one person decided to pay my rent this month.
Oh, hey, that's good.
But
that's good. You can use it to buy a houseboat.
I will put it on the down payment on the upcoming yacht.
Yes, the Vancouver Ocean. So screwed up out there.
This next question comes in from Max, and they say, how is collision handled with larger creatures in the Steam version of the game? Do they still have the same effective size in one tile? Thanks in advance. Smiley face.
Yeah, absolutely the same, because there's no way we were going to tackle multi-tile creatures. Absolutely the same. like we have the creatures are printed bigger so that they have this sense of being big creatures because it looked very silly when we had like a 32 by 32 dragon or a 32 by 32 giant elephant. um, and especially because you'd have to distinguish the elephant from the giant elephant.
Mhm.
And inside a 32 by 32 it just starts to look like a square like as it continues to push closer and closer to the corners, like you're inflating it like you were playing Dig Dug or something. And so we gave him some breathing, space there, just a little bit of puffed out. Now it's funny that the giant elephant still kind of pushes the corners because you have to it has to look really big. But yeah, it'll let us do really cool hydras and dragons though. These big old 96 by 64 sprites, right? It looks awesome. And but no like multi-tile creature mechanics. Of course, being graphical opens new doors there, and in terms of like what that could look like, that hopefully can. I mean, it obviously would have to come along for the ride in the classic version too. And we thought about that. I mean, all the ideas we came up for that involved kind of frame. I mean, it was starting to act like a 3D game or something. I'm like, I need keyframe animations for walking procedural creatures and stuff or whatever, moving through these. And I was like, is that worth it? Is that really worth it? Do we care? I mean, the only thing weird about having small, big creatures is how they hang out under the trees, I think. Feels weird. But the Z level question of a big creature is even harder than the multi-tile one, right? Like if you'd have a giant walking with feet that stamp on the ground and then it's up in higher Z levels and stuff. And is that really like the way, like, do we want to deal with those problems before we deal with other cool stuff we could add? It seems less and less likely sometimes, like the payoff or the for doing it versus all the other stuff. Yeah, I guess that's part of getting older. Only so much time left to do this game.
Um, I remember playing a. I remember playing a 7-day RL a while ago that had a prototype idea for how you could do multi-tile creatures, and I just remember hitting the look key as a little @ symbol, and there was 8 zeros that lift up, disappeared, and then reappeared. And I examined it, and it said dragon's foot.
Yeah, that's the
And
idea.
that's kind of the problem when you realize how big a lot of screens can get. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even like we were looking at our whales, right? Like, how big would a whale? Like when you say like, oh, a dwarf fortress tile is roughly 2 meters across and 3 meters tall or whatever. Then like, how long is a whale? Is it 50 tiles, or something, or 20 tiles or 30 tiles? Like, how long is it? I mean, I don't. We just have whale, right? Are we still really way back in the like we need to do another animal challenge before we have a blue whale is 30 meters, which would only be 15 tiles. That'd be pretty cool though. Big old 15 tile critter and you can run along its back. um yeah, it's like fighting on a pirate ship.
As chat says, a tile is big enough to hold 100 dragons as long as 99 of them are lying down.
Yeah, still true.
Still
Will be true for quite a while. But yeah, not. I mean, someday we'll make good on some of our threats to make tiles matter more and cram things into them. Like, I remember that thing we talked about, the skulls that would eventually turn into a wall you could slide down, or turn into a ramp that you could slide down if you dump enough skulls in a tile. Someday.
Someday. The next question comes in from Casey, and they say, we've been shown animated sprites on Vermin. What else are you hiding from the people, and who's paying to keep it quiet?
So yeah, I mean, I've saw, like, I don't remember if it was a frog croaking, and you've probably seen birds flying just because they're hard to avoid. Not too many more. I mean, at some point we had an animated cheese. This was, I think we talked about that, right? We animated a cheese.
Because of that, I learned that maggot cheese is illegal in Europe.
Oh, isn't it made in Europe? Oh no, it's made in Sardinia, right, or
Yeah,
something.
you,
I
you
mean,
can't
Sardinia is part of Europe. I think it's close.
you can't make it
You can't
in
import
most of
it.
Europe or have it because the maggots don't necessarily die,
Oh yeah, well they're not supposed to die. I think you're supposed to eat them live.
and then
That's why it pops and moves.
they stay alive in
Yeah.
your stomach.
Oh well, isn't that a great place for a thing to be?
Yeah, it's great.
As long as they don't eat their way out, right? Then it's just like having a friend.
Ideally, yes. Um, I mean, the things add that to the list of things I don't want to think about. Um, the next question I have here is from Douglas, and they say, "What is the plan for the soundtrack for the graphical version? I really loved the one track that we've been hearing so far in the previews, but there's been two actually. Was wondering whether this track is going to be part of a larger OST or if it's just simply a replacement for the one that we have currently."
Yeah, well, I mean, Tanya's still got things to say about that at a future date. I've heard four. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. Um, and we need to wait a little bit for things to come together
Yeah,
to say more.
looking forward to it.
Have to wait. Have to wait.
Next question is, what sort of changes does the interface undergo to accommodate large screens and resolutions? Sometimes other games have a tendency to end up with text that is too small to read.
Teeny little
And
8 by 12.
buttons.
Yeah. So the current version does handle ultra wide, which as far as I know, that means 4,000 plus across, right? We were talking to Mike about this because Mike actually, artist Mike, working on the game, has an ultra wide monitor, like this gigantic curvy thing or whatever. I'm not sure how they work because I don't have one, but he said the kind of general way to approach that, at least, is to define a working area kind of in the center of the screen. So we've kind of cut off the left and right side for interface purposes, so the menus won't be like way over on the right and way over on the left, but you'll still be able to see your fortress filling the whole thing, assuming you embarked on a large enough. I haven't done the math there. Like, what is if you have a 4,000 level screen divided by 32? That's 125, so that's smaller than the typical Embark of 4x4. So you would be able to fill an entire ultra wide, I guess, with just 3/4 of your fortress. But then there's the other question, which is when you're in those resolutions, then 8 by 12 starts to become like a teeny little like illegible thing, and we haven't handled that yet. But the plan is to handle that before the release. I don't know, the easiest thing to do would just be to double the font at a certain resolution, which is a kind of kludgy approach, but it's easy. It has the advantage of being easy. And I don't know, like, if the typical approach is to do like a bunch of fonts at different sizes, or to use kind of true type stuff, which we never really figured out without crashing the computer or whatever. But yeah, we're not planning to release with the teeny tiny problem in any event, even if we have to kludge through it at first before we come up with something better.
Yeah, as somebody who uses very large monitors, I have two 32-inch monitors. I would very much like to see bigger text, but next question comes in from Tristan, and they say, "I love the ASCII aesthetic. When do you think that we will be able to see how the game will look in ASCII? And will it be before the release or after?"
I mean, it's still up in the air. I think it's not something we're going to do first, because we need to. I mean, how long has it been since we announced this? 3 years. We need to get it done. We need to get the Steam Premium release done, and it's not done.
Why we're here.
So yeah, so we're like, so we haven't started Classic, and so I think you'll probably, I mean, you'll definitely have to wait some amount of time, whether that lines up with the release or not. Kind of depends on how quick it is to make selections, because it is going to look quite a bit different, right? I mean, the idea and the whole kind of way the premium release is structured is to allow the classic release to be there, which is the premium's interface layer is just a kind of glorified curses. It's 8 by 12 in a grid. It just can accept a lot more glyphs, right? And so the classic thing's the same way. except we're just going to be feeding it different glyphs. And what that means in certain cases is a open question. Like when you have a button, a 4x3 button, where ideally we'd like the classic version to stay the same as possible, but there's going to be some cases I think where a 4x3 text button is not going to express like the same thing that a 4x3, which amounts to a 32x36 tile, it can express, right? Because that you can use an art piece there, right? That looks like a donkey or something if you're doing some animal zone or something. Whereas a 4x3 text thing is 12 letters, where you would rather not write like animal zone, like ANML zone or something, right? It would look kind of stupid, and you'd prefer to use a longer, rectangular shape. And so that would mean reshaping the menus slightly. Now, fortunately, all of our menus have kind of coordinates and movable boundaries and stuff. It's not a complete nightmare to have two different versions. I mean, they resize themselves and stuff based on the size of the window sometimes. So I think we'll be a little flexible there while still having like full mouse support in classic, and figure out how to do certain of those buttons before we could kind of say what it's going to look like.
The last question I kind of have about Steam version stuff, and then I kind of move on to just more general questions, comes in from Rob, and they ask, after taking the project in a new direction with Kitfox Games, what, in terms of development, has gone better than expected? Or anticipated is the word that they use. And what has been the biggest bugbear thus far that has sneaked past? That was a larger time sink than you ever planned.
Okay, so what went really well? I mean, the fact that we got the graphics on the screen at all. I mean, that happened pretty fast, all things considered, and a lot of that's kind of thanks to the people that helped us port to SDL, and such. That it worked. The environment continued to work, even though we asked a lot more out of it than was previously being asked. Like we used to just slap down like a single colored rectangle and then slap down a glyph on top of it, and now we've got like 18 layers or something instead being printed during the main game. And the fact that runs is nice. I like it. And runs in the kind of software rendering and doesn't seem to set computers on fire or anything. So I didn't have to like go and rewrite everything or figure out all the kind of stuff that's we're still I mean, stuff with like however people do. I mean, I'm still back in deprecated OpenGL world with my other stuff that I haven't updated, my other side projects and things, and I never figured out how the new ones work, and have been spared that thus far. Although we'll see. We haven't done SDL2 yet, and we're still thinking about that. But the fact that works is nice. It seems to work on every computer we've tested it on, and not surprising because it's the same as the Dwarf Fortress that's currently released, which works for a lot of people. So good. And then things that were harder or worse than expected. Well,
do the forest fires count?
Oh gosh. Well, okay. Was 2020 worse than expected? Was 2021 worse than expected? Back in 2018, when we were looking to those years. Yeah, I'd say so.
I think 2020 might just be a fair answer to that one, actually.
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's. I mean, for me, it took a lot of kind of growing pains to just get into the flow of working with artists and stuff. It's a new thing. I mean, it's the reason we hired Kitfox to begin with, right? Is because like, unfortunately, we haven't had to do any paperwork or anything, which is nice. I don't know how to do this 1099s or whatever forms. I don't even know the numbers. And yeah, that of course took us a little bit of work. I mean, Steam has been another thing that I would say is super easier than I thought it would be is just putting things up on Steam, like the test versions that we've had the artists playing and stuff, to test out their graphics and so forth. I mean, it's really just click a button, run a script, pop your games up on Steam. It's pretty scary, actually, in terms of like accidentally releasing stuff or whatever. Like, poop,
I
there
get
it
a
goes.
I get a ping from Steam database on my tracker every single time you click that button. And then I go look at it. So that kind of concludes everything Steam related questions that I have. So now we're kind of moving on to general questions, fun questions, just random ones that didn't fit anywhere. So I'm starting off with this very, very, very important, serious subject, which
Yes.
is what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen carp? It comes in from a concerned citizen.
Well, you better be concerned if you're concerned about the airspeed rather than the water speed, because that means it's up on the shore, and you're about to be like those poor dwarf fisher dwarves in the artwork. Very nice colors in that one. I remember that picture. It was a good picture.
As they break the speed of sound.
Yeah.
So the next actual question comes in from Stone, and they ask, what is the percentage chances of dwarves having twins or triplets?
Oh yeah. That's because it's marked as rare, right? If I recollect the well, here's what we'll do. I should have done this before, but I'm gonna fire up the other computer and we'll just when it's ready to go, we'll come back.
Okay. Yeah, because that's something that I've seen happen once. I had triplets once. And I
Yeah,
was very
yeah. It's
curious.
like it's called the let's see, creature standard, and then gonna do a search for the word rare. Multiple. Well, that's not a nice way to say it. Multiple litter rare. So occasionally dwarves will have a litter of multiple. Yeah, I could have chosen a different name for the tag. I suppose there are a lot of mistakes like that in the game, or a lot of like ill-chosen words and such.
Because in
So
something like 800 hours of my fortress called Longdeath, which is the fort that I'm trying to keep alive for 1,000 years, I've had one set of triplets.
yeah, that sounds rare. And that must have been after. Gosh, do you know how many births you've had?
Oh, they. I don't even think I could tell you how many deaths. I know that the death counter, and granted, we do have a lot of livestock, so we're constantly slaughtering. But the death counter is above 12,000 now.
Yeah, I'm glad it's running
So
at
I
all.
couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Yeah, is the death trap thing holding up, or is it kind of broken for migrants and stuff?
We haven't received a migrant to the fortress in about 210 years ish, I think.
Now, is that because does it tell you why, or is that a matter of speculation?
No migrants have arrived this year, but we speculate it's because of the death counter hitting 3,000.
Okay, but when it said the migrants didn't arrive, because of a just a unit cap thing,
Yeah, just a unit cap.
not the death trap thing, because it would tell you if it's a death trap, but it doesn't tell you about the unit cap thing.
Yeah, it
I think
just
that
says no migrants have arrived this season.
yeah, I assume it's just being like you have enough dwarves, you have 3,000 dwarves.
Well, we have about 40 usually, but
Yeah, no, it's assuming. I mean, there are some kind of old bad assumptions in the game back from 2006 or whatever when I was like, we really need to control the number of dwarves people can have, and let's put a cap on 3,000 dead because it's probably thinking that it would be too slow to look for places to bury them or something at some point, just having to go through that check when it could be sorting them off to a different, storage location and not check them at all. There's just a lot of optimization tricks that I had not learned way back when, and so there's still these crufty old things that when I'm reminded of them, I can get rid of them pretty fast, and that's one of them. Uh, let's see, multiple litter rare. I'm typing it into my find in files, and it's kerchunk, because it takes a while for it to fire up. There we go. So if creature has multiple litter rare, you have 1 out of 500.
oh wow.
And the I don't know, like what is the frequency? Well, I guess that's Googleable. Twin frequency. Just type in twin frequency, and twin frequency is 1 in 250. So and triplets and such is 1 in 10,000, which is kind of negligible according to that. So I was off by a factor of 2, except dwarves aren't humans, so I was right.
Naturally.
Of course, the
Ah.
humans also have multiple literary and are wrong, so back to being wrong. But yeah, so yeah, just off by a factor of two. I don't know why. I probably searched it and was wrong at some site or something. Yeah, so there's your answer.
Someone go edit the wiki. um, the next question also comes in from Stone, and they ask, where did the idea for dwarven milk come from?
Not any place good, I guess. It's definitely the kind of thing where we well, I definitely it's a strong word when we're talking about 15, 16 years ago, but like the purring maggot, I assume just came first as like a fun underground pet, and then milk in general would have come later. And then when we found that we didn't have any underground creatures to milk, which probably wasn't true. Well, you can't milk an elk bird, can you? What can you milk? Can you milk a droutha? I don't remember if droutha's have milk.
I can't. It's been a while since I've tamed a Draltha.
Yeah, so it's like it's trouble, right? Because you don't start with them tame, but you can get at purring maggots pretty easily, especially in the older versions. I think it was even easier to trap them, although I'm not 100% sure. Because back when it was 2D or something. Although I'm not sure when the milk came in versus the 2D. That could have been after. But so it was just I kind of remember just like, well, where do the dwarves get milk? And then just kind of a fuck it moment. We just like they get it from the purring maggot. and then at that point it all starts kind of flowing from there. They call it dwarven milk because you imagine like the humans coming and it being a trade item or something, right? They're like, well, that's the dwarven milk. It's a mystery where it comes from.
It's almost more like making like olive oil or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the maggot component of the olive oil process.
Well, they
But olive oil would come from squeezing. Yeah, do you squeeze? Yeah. Well, I mean, the maggots don't die. Do the maggots die? I don't remember the maggots dying.
I mean, you still gotta squeeze them. How big is a maggot?
Well, that's probably in the code, although I don't think I would have thought to. Well, no, the purring maggot's always an exception, right? So if I go to, doing all this code checking this time, where is it? Is it in creature subterranean or is it in creature standard or is it in creature
there's
small?
Always been two images in my head. One is like just squeezing it and dropping it, and then the other one is like kind of like when you have a leech that's all puffed up on blood, it would be like squeezing the blood out of the leech and then releasing the leach.
Oh, its body size is 1,000. It's a body size is 1,000 when it's fully grown. So it's what is that? That's a kilo? That's like a kilogram water weight.
All right, that's like a small dog.
So it's a chunk. It's not like Jojo the Dachshund that with the mini Dachshund that we've shown on in a few times now weighs 7.5 pounds. And so that's like what 3.2 kilograms or 3 kilograms or something. I don't really keep track anymore of these difficult math problems, but so that means that the purring maggot is like a third of a Joe, like a third of a JoJo. So it's like the size of a guinea pig because JoJo used to be the same size as the guinea pigs, but is now like 2 or 3 guinea pigs. And so yeah, it's like a little guinea pig.
Huh.
And you milk it. Which I mean it's just like squeezing the
gently massaging the milk out of the maggot.
Yeah, but it's purring, so it's fine. And then prized for its milk, the description says. A tiny larva, which is prized for its milk. Of course, the word larva, I mean, maggot makes it implicitly a larva, but using the word larva itself, of course, raises the more important questions, which are as yet unanswered. I mean, it could be 10,000 years until it achieves its final form.
Potentially. The next question from Earl is a air quotes touchy subject, and they say, this is a touchy subject, so I want it handled with care, but I am getting frustrated with my Embark animals only being attracted to the same sex. I understand this implementation with sentient pair being creatures, but should we have the same logic applied to cats, llamas, and cave crocodiles?
Well, I mean, I don't actually know the scientific realities here. I only have my own anecdotal experience about um, animals and their close friends, and it seems like a thing. Although I don't know, you know, if it works at all the same way. So we basically just have the same code for all of the critters to capture that kind of experience. Though I understand, of course, the frustration, and if it's something where you're like, oh, I absolutely wanted a breeding pair, and would my Embark dwarves have selected their animals according to those properties as far as they knew them? I mean, I don't know what the interface for that looks like, so it's kind of a question I've really been trying to tackle. I mean, I understand the frustration.
I wonder if we could have like an option in Embark to just have air quotes breeding pair.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a reasonable thing to ask for, and I mean, it's not like the kind of obviously you don't want to equate like representation for the humans and dwarves and stuff with representation in animals. So I don't think it's offensive or anything to make that kind of request while at the same time, trying to cover, the range of expression that we have in animals, which has always been a part of the game, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, so yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a reasonable ask. I understand, why it would be, considered touchy, etc.
I always slaughter the
Um,
Embark animals anyway, so it's never
yeah, I
been a
mean, you need
problem.
to eat. You need to eat, and not a lot of discrimination there.
There's not exactly a lot of grass for them to eat on this glacier that I just embarked on, so better eat them.
Yeah, no, it's more like sailing in a ship, right? You just have those animals, and they're not all going to make it.
For obvious
Not a
reasons.
lot of grass on the ship.
Yeah. The next question also comes in from Earl, and they say, "You talked about the difficulty of boats prior, but how about a partial? But how difficult would a partial implementation be? I want to play in worlds where civs that are separated by oceans, but they have no ways of interacting with each other."
We've it's always like the boats have always felt closer than they are to us, just because we think about them so much. That like we haven't often thought about partial implementations. We've always just been optimistically like boats are going to be in soon. So whether soon means 7 years, it feels like we're coming in just over the horizon. But we have had a discussion a little bit when we were talking about improving adventure mode, um, like which was part of this kind of army slash finishing villains slash whatever, right?
Mhm.
Is making adventure mode have just be generally improved. Uh, and like a quick and easy thing is to add like the ability to sail from port to port as just kind of a fast travel option. And then you could respect the fact that like there is an abstract thing in World Gen that allows them to sail over the water. I mean, they obviously do like move like they will colonize across water, right, when they make their new sites.
Mhm.
um and that just it uses a kind of as far as I recollect, it uses just a kind of weight on the spread of their influence in terms of the places that they're allowed to place a site, and it's just weighted heavier on water, I think. Whether that's even realistic or not, because people tend to like to travel on water once they figure out how, and it's more economical, etc., to do so. But I don't remember quite how it's coded, but um, so I'm not like in terms of what they're asking for. Would that be what though? Like just that you can get wagons from overseas, but yeah, I mean not that you even see the boats, but just that you have more contact or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, then there would, I mean, there presumably you'd want to have a port though, or whatever. Um, yeah, yeah. There's a few standing questions there. I don't know if I missed it in the question the way it was phrased. Um,
I think you more or less nailed the question. I guess it's kind of it's a tricky thing, because like I understand people's frustrations about like the spread it outedness of it, and I play other games that also generate worlds and they have various weird port implementations. But because of kind of the nature of like Dwarf Fortress's simulation, once you start kind of taking shortcuts, it just takes away from it a bit, I guess, in my opinion. Um, So
Yeah, it depends on what they are, I guess.
yeah,
And I mean, is a shortcut like a nascent feature, or is it going to be like a glaring flaw for the next 7 years?
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe dwarves need
there's
like
probably
submersible wagons or something.
yeah, I'm still looking forward to the day when we actually have the boats, and then you just have your big old sea cave fort and can send out the boats and stuff. It's gonna be so good, so good. Let's just get it started. Let's just do that. Yeah.
The next question comes in from Chups, and they ask, I read somewhere that you designed parts of the game by reverse engineering fiction stories that you've enjoyed to see what was needed to tell them. If this is the case, do you still use that method? Or has the game grown so much that it is no longer a viable option or productive option? Thanks for your time and your
um,
great game.
So, I mean, you've seen you can look at the Three Toe Story area, right? And see like, that's how a lot of that, I mean, those things that we think about there are, the way that we were thinking about it when we started. And there's a lot of stories that weren't published or pieces of stories, paragraphs. We were passing around this book, I remember. That was way back when we lived in New Hampshire, too. So this was like even before, this was for Drag Slay. We were passing this book back and forth. We were writing this paragraph about this wizard that lived in this swamp with these lizard people, and we'd pass the book back and forth, and each of us would write a chapter, and then we'd kind of analyze the chapter to see what we were trying to get at when we were working on Drag Slay. And but now, like, it's not something that we do directly anymore because the notes are so extensive that what are we profiting from by having a new idea? Kind of, it's like we need to catch up with some of the thinking we've been doing. And now that the thing is so far along as well, when you're thinking about story moments and stuff, it's kind of a way of thinking that doesn't need that method so formalized anymore. It's probably something you can get a feel for without ever having to do it, though having done it a lot, it helps to think about the kind of stories that you'd like to come out of this feature. And that's something we talk about every time we add a feature is, what is how is the player going to experience this? And how will it add to the stories they're telling? Like how much juice is there in there for stories? And how can we surface the parts that are the most kind of storyful? It just kind of becomes a whole way of design rather than this sort of formalized process we used to use.
I love hearing like I actually go back sometimes and listen to old talks that you've done about ways that you've designed things in the past, and it's kind of interesting hearing the then and then the now. But the next question I have here comes from Dacost, and they have a very quick, concise question that comes to my mind occasionally, which is why tree not produce logs after cave-in?
Oh, well, because it didn't call the cut down tree function, I guess. I mean, it's like in the I mean, I suspect what happened is that trees used to be one tile, right? And in the event of a cave-in, that tile would generally either be scrunched or it would be the top tile that would fall down and still. I don't even remember, like in the old versions before the game had multi-tile trees. If you undercut a tree tile and then like you got rid of all the ground beneath it and then you sawed around it like in a cartoon and it dropped, did the tree just remain standing?
I
Which is
mean,
like bulk and then just sitting there. In that case, you haven't lost the wood. But I mean, it's deeply silly. But in that case, you haven't lost the wood. And so when we went to multi-tile trees, like cave-ins were kind of in the rear view mirror at that point because when we went to 3D, the cave-ins became less important than they felt in 2D and such. And I think we just forgot or just glossed over that, like didn't think about it. Um, just because of the order of the way the features got added in. I think that's really all that happened.
wow.
Developers certainly don't think of everything, not in this game.
I've definitely had that happen and wonder about it, and then just like kind of figure that, oh, I guess they just got eviscerated, like, anything that's underneath the cave-in was always my assumption.
Yeah,
But like when a tree
yeah,
is burning on the surface, like it'll collapse still, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No, it's just not great, not perfect.
the next question comes in from Mark Urist, and they say, Is there a painting or drawing system planned for dwarves? My idea here in brackets, where they say could allow the dwarves to use a flag creation system and generate a random flag or something.
So yeah, we have the whole image thing, right? We've got images that are engraved. We have them in statues. I don't remember the other contexts. They can be threads, improvements, like when you sew. I don't recall. I know it's in the code, but I don't remember if we got there. And we had one that's in the code that I don't think is in the game, which is illustrated books, but we didn't get to it. But it's like basically the kind of painterly drawing arts have been absolutely neglected, right? And I think the issue there more than anything was that we would want to have the paint or ink material, and then we just kind of didn't do it. So that's really the only reason that we haven't. I mean, because everything in Dwarf Fortress has materials, right? And dyeing stuff was kind of a pain. And then when we started pottery glazes, we really half-assed that and just ended up with a couple. Like, even though pottery glazes, there should be all kinds of colors.
Yeah.
And it becomes like a research project figuring out how paints work and how inks work. Especially like, yeah, I don't even know what traditional inks are.
In my mind, it would be like some form of chalk and then something else, or like some form of ink, like, or a dye and then a sheet, probably.
Yeah, yeah, and we've got sheets, right? We're good on sheets now.
No, we just need an easel or like a stand to place them on.
Yeah, no, it'd be super cool, right? And it's like, especially because when you have multiple colors and stuff, being able to set that up, or having a dwarf entering like a period of monochrome just because the materials were the only materials that were available, right? Or whatever, when we talk about it. We always kind of threatened at some point to have this art analyzer thing that tried to put the artists into different phases based on the stuff they drew, but we never got around to a whole bunch of stuff when it came to art, and rather had those really weird tangential things into like the poetry form generator and the music form generator, right? Which is interesting, but it doesn't get at the individual artists at all or their artwork as much. But yeah, no, I mean, it's been a thing that's bothered me for a long time, the kind of lack of visual arts, aside from the kind of engraving and statue side of it. But just that they never draw anything, they never paint anything. I mean, maybe it has a dwarfy feel to it because you're underground and such or whatever. Like, I mean, we don't even know if they look at their engravings or if they kind of feel them, right? We don't know a lot of things about how dwarves work and their light. I mean, you assume that they can see.
You assume that. I don't know. The one dwarf that I had that had both of its eyes bitten out seemed to see just fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of places where that's penalized. It's mainly just kind of a reflexive combat penalty, I'm assuming, because that's how a lot of. I mean, that's just where you start thinking about missing body parts more than you normally do, right? But it doesn't it's not really handled well, I think, compared to something like a crutch, right? We have crutches in the game, and that's at least something, right? We don't have prosthetics, which is of course in the notes naturally, but we have something, but we don't have anything that kind of respects audio or visual disabilities like that.
I had a bunch of very violent fights in a recent fort, and I had a dwarf that had a heart that was mangled beyond recognition, and another dwarf with a brain that was mangled beyond recognition. Both of them seemed totally fine. I questioned things.
That's really weird. Yeah, it's like, because I thought it would do like the impairs function check, which, I mean, when you're mangled beyond recognition, that should return 0, right?
Yeah.
And if like the part that has the thought function has impaired function, you're supposed to die. But imperfect.
Didn't. um, the next question comes in from Jacob, and they say, there's a lot of info you've given in interviews about macro parts of world generation, like height maps and vegetation and the like. But can you speak a little bit about how the local map is generated? It seems like this is generated on the fly. How do rivers link correct? How do you get rivers to link correctly, and how do you generate sites and buildings?
Yeah. Okay. So this is all. I haven't worked with this stuff for a long time, so some of this data may be, not 100% correct, but it's basically going to be right. So let's talk about rivers first. So in the top level world gen, we've talked about how they flow to erosion, and then you can see them, right? They're just there. You see it. You see how they flowed downhill, or they carved a canyon, or whatever. But then when you zoom in to the next level down, it creates what we call the mid map, right? When you make a 16 by 16 for a given world map title. Now, what it doesn't show you up above is the world map, like say your 129 by 129 world map, has data that's fixed, that's generated randomly, but it's generated at the beginning of the world or after the rivers have flown, which is the edge leaving point of every river from into another tile. So if you have a river tile where the river comes from the north and then exits to the east, there's a north crossing point and an east crossing point that's stored in the memory permanently. It's not altered. That's just up there. And then we also know the flow level of the river based on the rainfall and all that kind of stuff or whatever, but then it just stores it. So we have 3 stored quantities then. And then when it creates a mid map, it takes that crossing point and the width of the river on the north and the east in that example, and then it does a random walk or whatever between those 2 points. Then you've got a river of a given thickness in that 16 by 16 map, and then you're like, okay. Actually, it doesn't need to widen it because they're never wider than one tile. Wider than one mid-map tile. So you don't even need to widen them yet. You just know how wide they are lower down. So it goes from 1 point at the north in the mid-map to 1 point in the east in the mid-map. Now, when you zoom in on a given river tile, it's going to turn that one tile in the mid-map into a 48 by 48 tile below. And this is where the mid-map also has crossing points. And because we use the same seed to generate the mid-map each time, those crossing points are regenerated faithfully, right? Every time. So now when you go to generate your 48 by 48s, and you have several of them in a given fortress, or when you're walking around in adventure mode, the crossing points are all generated no matter if you go from the south or if you load from the north or load from the east or load from the west as you're walking around or stitching forts together. It'll have the same crossing point and the same width. So when you're generating this 48 by 48 chunk, it's not just the elevation data that it has of the corners and the center and so forth, but it also has the crossing points of the rivers. And then it can just stitch them together, and they always stitch perfectly and they always flow the right direction. So it's just a little bit of extra data hanging around that you can regenerate faithfully or store all the time, depending on how often you use it, etc. Blah blah blah. That lets you get away with that kind of thing. And sites are similar. Like the site itself has some very general information all the time about its population and the kinds of buildings that are in it and stuff. And then when you get close to it, because it can cross mid-map boundaries, they aren't stored in the mid-map specifically, but when you get close to it, it creates a thing called a site realization. It opens up a new map. Again, not the zoomed-in map, but the mid-level map. Excuse me, of the site, which is at most 17 by 17 mid-map tiles. And so then it has an idea of where the roads cross and where the buildings are. It knows all of the buildings now, and where they are. And then the trick here is that every single building you see, all the shops and everything, all of the road intersections, all of the bridges, everything are all restricted to live within one 48 by 48 tile. They never cross those boundaries. It never tries to make a building that is really long or crosses one of those boundaries, so that everything in a given 48 by 48 is self-contained. All it needs to know is where's the road intersection, where does it exit, northeast, south, west, how wide is the road, what's it made out of, and then the buildings, it can do whatever it wants. It knows when it comes in, I need to have like these 2 shops and X number of hovels or whatever, and then it just places them in the different parts of the however it wants, based on the seed. But there's never any conflicts because they never cross the edges
I feel like
and so forth.
I feel like I'm reading your book again.
Yeah, no, that's. I think I mean, I remember there's a talk. I think it was the talk I did at NYU. You can look up practice, like NYU practice Tarn Adams, and probably will find it for you. And it goes into this. And there's lots of pictures,
I think I've
of
seen
how the
that.
map works, how the crossing points work, and all that kind of stuff.
I'll dig it up and stick it in the description for the YouTube VOD. Um, the next question comes in from Willade, I think is how you pronounce that. I'm probably butchering that. And they say, hey, Tarn, watching a previous interview, I believe a previous one by Blind, and you mentioned mixing soil and such in regards to depleting sand and clay blocks. Do you feel likewise with liquids? I was unsure if the plan for vampire dwarves to permanently suffer from alcohol withdrawal, since there's no eat, drink, and sleep, but I was thinking that it would be sweet one day to make mixed beverages, including things such as blood in drinks, which could help satiate the vampires refusing anything besides sucking my legendary weaponsmiths dry.
Yeah, so I mean it's a different question. Like when you're talking about, I don't remember if they were talking about map tiles there, because like the idea of mixing liquids in map tiles, like water, right? We only have water and magma now. That's a hard problem, right? I mean that like games like Noida that are built around it can do it, right? And I know Qud has a liquid mixing system. But when we have active 3D flows, it's hard to do it well. And at least that's beyond me, because people are good at different things and I'm not good at that. But the question though about, could you do it in a barrel? Then suddenly it's a different question altogether, because we already have that, right? In like this water laced with mud, or blood laced with vomit, or vomit covered with, or we have some foul ass mixed fluids, right? And those things can be kind of infinitely mixed. So this is more of the question then isn't a tech question anymore. It's more of a feature question in terms of like having a dwarven bartender
Pretty much.
that you have the mug and you could put three things into it, and then that's kind of adjacent to the whole recipes and cooking stuff that we never finished or got to when we were working on taverns the first time. That was the kind of two cut features, were the recipes and the randomized games. So that's when I'd expect to be able to do that, with the caveat that that is an extra step to make like vampire specific cocktails and stuff. And it's like, is it the right solution? Or should the vampires be like, well, if I still need alcohol, then I don't like care about the fact that I don't need to drink anymore. I still want to drink. Kind of like the goblins in food, right? Which is a whole other ball of whatever, can of whatever. The fact that they don't need to eat, but they do eat, or they would. Shouldn't a goblin be out there eating a dwarf? Seems like a fair thing to do. But then you got a lot of complications after that. It's like, does the vampire not drink because they can't digest that stuff anymore? Does it pass through the system? Does their gut just fill up with alcohol and keep filling and filling and filling until they're kind of pot bellied with alcohol and they need to like stab a hole and let it drain out? Difficult question for them.
So we've kind of made it through the kind of general questions. So I have a handful of questions about pie in the sky, myths and magic stuff, and then we're pretty much done here. So the first inevitable, this one's, I kept this one in because I think it's kind of funny, which is, comes in from John, and they say, do you expect the Myths and Magic release to still be the long wait, or has the Steam release taken the title?
That's a hard question now. That's a hard question. How long have you guys actually been waiting? When was the, because I know that we made the announcement about the Steam release like, 3 years ago or whatever, but the last Dwarf Fortress release was, I mean, there was the January 28th, 2021 one, but that was just some dubiously half successful balancing stuff. But the one before that, the villains one, was when clicking all versions. February. Okay, yeah. February 29th, 2020. So we're up to what's that? 21 months? Math's hard now. Since I left being a mathematician, I'm no longer a practitioner of addition or any other thing. But something like 21 months of waiting, and that sounds like a big wait to me. It's not quite. Is that even the record yet? We'll definitely break the record, though. I mean, the record was something like 2 years, right?
Roughly,
Was it
wasn't
20? Was it 25 months? I don't know. It was back way back when. And so we're getting there. It's definitely we're long in the tooth, and we got to get this thing done. And then you ask like, was the big wait ever gonna be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Right? I sure hope not. I mean, the big wait was. I mean, we wanted people to not think that we were in like a 6 month development cycle or whatever.
Mhm.
When we have to do like the map rewrite or whatever, it's just not going to be done that fast, and there's no way to do it fast. But at the same time, when we've got the Steam release up, we've got, just like we had in January this year, we'll have the ability to do smaller releases at the same time that are just kind of tuning stuff up or whatever. Like a two branch kind of solution to the thing. But there won't be a like experimental branch with half map rewrites. It's just not gonna, like, the game's not gonna compile for the longest time to get that stuff up. And uh, but are we gonna break 24 months? Are we gonna break 36 months? I just don't see it. I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think the big wait will be as big as that. So it may be just an absolute exercise in like branding failure. Should have called this the big wait, but we didn't know about it at the time, if I recollect the order of things.
Yeah.
We were talking about the big wait before the Steam announcement. Everything blurs together now. It's impossible to do it without looking stuff up. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair question. Maybe it'll be a horse race. Depends on when we get the Steam release up, but could be a horse race.
So the next question I just think is an interesting one. I've heard you answer similar questions before, but it's always interesting, which is, what feature or mechanic do you wish you could implement into Dwarf Fortress, but you'll never be able to?
Yeah, I mean, always the first thing that pops into my mind, because it's so important for stories and stuff, is like prophecies and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not super into time travel stories, which is the other thing I talk about, but prophecy and time travel are kind of like different sides of the same coin or whatever. That, like, being able to guide the random generation in such a way. I mean, of course, there's ways to half-ass it, and we've talked a lot about that, different ways to get it done, but it won't ever feel 100% right. And like being able to do all kinds of omens and make the world feel like it's faded, but still like you're playing in it and stuff. Like, those things are always really important and cool, and we're just not going to be able to do it any kind of justice. And then, but what else? What else? I mean, there's things that we can't do that are really annoying, like having like a spherical world. I mean, it's like there's all kinds of solutions. I know there's all kinds of solutions, but they all involve a little tear here and there, right? You got, like, there's really like maybe I talked about this before. Have you seen the way like Dyson Sphere Project does it?
Yep.
They have a really nice organized grid, and then you get to a certain latitude, and it's like shifts over, and there's like half the grid is touching half here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that would like just play hell with our pathfinding and everything else, right? It's just like something you have to think of in advance. And I don't know that it's worth in the map rewrite, like overcoming that kind of challenge. I think it would cost us too much to do that, and to even figure out how you'd straddle a workshop across that line. Like they did that by having it like, so it's literally you just can't place certain things in certain places.
Yeah.
Like if it can't adjust the angles. And it was pretty cool. I think it's really cool the way they did it. But it's not feasible for us, I think. And there's always problems like that, no matter how you try and solve the sphere problem. So I think that's another one, like, shed a tear for the spherical world. I mean, we could do some Mercator ass shit like giant Greenlands, and then where's the pole? There is no pole.
I'm
or
I'm
whatever.
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think about like games that I know of that had spherical worlds that don't cheat. Because like RimWorld has a spherical world, but it cheats because like it generates a new map every time, and there's no continuity between map to map, so the
Yeah,
tiles are
yeah.
all entirely unique and generated separately. Um, and that seems outside of like first-person space games, like I want to say Avorion has planets that you can fly around. Elite Dangerous has planets that you can fly around, but like they're probably cheating somewhere. The like
Oh yeah,
Avorion
no,
is
I mean,
janky as hell.
yeah, it depends on what you mean by cheating, right? I mean, it's just a mathematical fact that you can't tile a sphere evenly, right?
Yeah.
It's just a fact. And but you know, you can use other shapes. And
Mhm.
in their case, because like in those say No Man's Sky type games where you can land anywhere, you just have like a polygonal mesh, but you can do anything you want with a polygonal mesh, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just use a pentagon here or there, and then you're fine. And or triangles. Obviously, you can tile a sphere with triangles, and they don't have to be the same size and all that kind of thing. But when you're stuck in grid land, like you just can't like it's a manifold thing or whatever. You can't have your manifolds gluing together. Your little ant walking on the world, looking at it as a 2D space,
Yeah.
trying to stitch those things together. It's impossible. Um, but you can do a creditable job, and that's when you ask yourself the question like, is it too much for Dwarf Fortress to say make 2 points or 4 points or 8 points on the sphere just inaccessible, like the deep ocean or something? Just be like, nah, boats don't sail there. It's like Bermuda Triangle type of situation, and because then you'd be fine, right? Like if there's just some places you cut out, because then you can tile the sphere fine, because it's not a sphere anymore. It's some topological nightmare with holes cut in it. Uh, then you'd be okay. Of course, adding in the depth complicates things slightly, and the fact that you want to walk around the world without orienting the map. I think even if you have holes, you run into a kind of north becoming east type of question pretty fast when you walk a circle around one of them and get back to your original starting location. Then you've flipped 90 degrees or whatever. But surmountable. Those questions are more surmountable than the original question. And then that's a kind of thing where, I mean, that could almost just be a checkbox or something, and then you're like, oh, okay, now we got spherical worlds with a little asterisk, right?
So we're almost done with the myths and magic questions, but I got one more coming in from Alex, and they say, when potentially implementing procedural magic metals, how will we know what the stats for the metal are?
Yeah, or even when you have bronze and iron in your fortress, how will you know what the stats of the metal are?
I don't know.
I think that's the underlying question is that even the vanilla game is frustrating in that way. Like you can intuit that steel is good, you can intuit that copper is bad, but I remember seeing arguments about iron because I mean iron versus bronze because I mean iron especially is just such a like iron once it's forged, we're not talking generally about pure iron. We're talking about it's not steel, but some various impurities and so forth. That iron can have all kinds of different qualities, right? Like iron worse than bronze, iron better than bronze, I think.
Mhm.
I'm often corrected on this kind of thing. So like for us, we chose iron with like be damned if I remember a damn thing. Inorganic metal, bronze. Bronze has what actually matters: impact yield and shear yield. Shear yield 172,000, and iron has shear yield 155,000. Um, so does that mean bronze is? I mean, people will correct me if I'm wrong or just not care, but I think bronze is slightly better than iron then in this implementation. Slightly better compressive yield, slightly better shear yield. But that was by no means like we could have done it a different way depending on what we mean by iron. And then of course steel is much better. So I mean, it feels like the game. We've been talking about this, but haven't figured out what we're going to do for like in-game encyclopedia stuff and how much time we'll have to even for like the jobs. Like right now you don't know what a job takes and what a job produces, and we just have a note in there being like, oh well, hover is the easiest thing to do now, and we just show you what the damn job is. what it takes and what it produces. And then, ideally with a little text description that's like why you would want one. It's like, why do you want a bed? Why do you want a cabinet? Why do you want, a traction bench? These aren't like, I mean, the bed feels obvious, but at the same time, you need to explain how to use it, what it's for, and that kind of thing. And then when you're talking about these metals, I mean, it's like normally a game will be like bronze equals 3, iron equals 2, or whatever.
Yeah.
And and because we have such kind of semi-realistic, but sort of always broken and shit, but like still, we aim toward having a more realistic implementation. It would still be well known which one's better, and I don't know if we just have like a greater than, less than thing. Like the fewer numbers we show, the better, because the dwarves wouldn't be thinking about it numerically until you get to the scholars or whatever, and then maybe they would start having some kind of numerical scale, which would be funny. But the smith would be just like the weaponsmith would be like, okay, this bronze is better than iron, and then steel is much better than bronze, etc. And then to answer the actual question, we would just carry on from there. Like however we can distinguish bronze and iron, that would then work for all the magical metals and everything else that's procedurally generated, because we'd have the numbers sitting there and we'd have the comparison method. And I think it kind of comes back to the sort of heart of the question of like, how the hell do you even know what's going on in the base game?
Yeah, I think generally the way I let dwarves deal with armor and stuff is I just make a bunch of armor out of a bunch of materials and just kind of hope for the best. Uh, I'm not too picky about what they use. If it's an old pickaxe that's made of copper and you kill a forgotten beast with it, good job.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a broader question too about like the because it's a game. Like bronze requires the tin and copper, right? And iron requires iron. So game wise, bronze should be the better one, just because it requires more work, or more luck, or more something, right? But then that. And then steel, of course, takes all the flux and all that stuff, so it takes a certain level of dedication and the extra steps that we added. Although I've been told all of my extra steps are wrong, and that's fine. But so that makes sense game wise. Then steel better than bronze, better than iron, and then copper just like copper version iron. That's just even though the frequencies would point to equating them, that's just not all things need to be equal. But the real answer is something that's a difficult question, which is about worldwide resource prevalence and so forth. Like, are copper and tin hard to find? Are they hard to find in the same place? And is iron hard to find? And also, iron should just be harder to work or something like that. I mean, I think that's part of the question. Is it just being more difficult to make than bronze too, or something like that? Maybe, I don't know. But so there's another interesting layer that can be added on top of things. But of course, then you go back to look at the gameplay and mechanics and things, and you're like, well, we don't want to make metal so scarce that the game sucks, right? Or that it's like your fortress is just this worthless outpost that needs to trade for everything unless the player buys into that. Right?
Yeah. I just feel sorry for any poor player who accidentally makes a bunch of Warhammers out of candy.
There should be, yeah, that's another one of the things. Yeah, it's like that leads to another question when we say bronze is greater than iron. It's like, well, then you have to look at the weight and you have to look at the impact and stuff. And so it could just be like, warning,
Dwarves
you are making like a
bunch of waffle bats.
Yeah, yes, like you can go play wiffle ball, but you don't like do anything with them or whatever.
Great for children.
Yes. No, it's
Very
like
safe.
it should be there should be practice toy hammers made up. Well, that would be a waste. That's a very spoiled child, but yes.
That's a rich child.
Yes. I'll bring the economy back.
Oh,
Have all those homeless dwarves again. It'll be great.
We're kind of in wrap up questions now. So Twisted Logic would like to know what is your plan after the Steam release, aside from a well deserved rest?
Well, I won't have one, I'm sure, because there will be things to do immediately after the release when everyone's hair is on fire. But yeah, sometime in there, yeah, maybe I'll take a break. That'd be nice. But yeah, then we have the many questions. It's like any features that got pushed off, and we have a great long list, right? It's not because we've taken so long. It's like not, and we've talked about this in Future of the Fortress. Like we don't know exactly when. Classic, ports, adventure mode, arena, these kind of things. We all want to have them in the first release, but not if it's going to take years. And then that's obviously going to be like, unlike recipes and stuff, we're not going to kick those cans down the road. That's got to be done um, as soon as possible. So who knows where that fits in, but it's right around that's early. If it has to happen at all, it's early. And then the thing was to look at villains and then the army stuff possibly all together because you might as well, or in some kind of like ideal timeline, the villain stuff comes first because that was the stuff that pushed off. But it may be more economical to do it all together. So that's been the plan to do that, and then there's going to be like Steam support, etc., is like an ongoing thing, and we'll see what else comes in there, like in terms of mod support and tech support for different monitors, like we've been talking about, and that kind of thing. The stuff that isn't like high priority hair on fire stuff will then be in that mess too. And we'll figure that, and we'll at that time, if we've had a good launch, then we'll have some resources to hopefully spread the work a little bit out on that. It's a whole new world there, right? I mean, who knows? And then we'd arrive at the myths stuff. So, I may have left something out, but that was the general idea.
I'm just gonna steal a question that my artist Cooler just posted in the chat, which is: was Featherwood's material-based statistics taken from styrofoam or something else?
Yeah, no, it's supposed to. I mean, it's got feather in the name, right? So, I mean, do we have balsa wood? I don't remember. I don't remember how it compares. Because if we had it, I mean, my inclination now would be like it's got to be lighter. But
it's got to float away when you breathe on it.
Yeah, it's like what is the density is something ridiculous, right? Yeah, density 100. Yeah, that's just silly. What is I mean, density 100 is a tenth water, and it's like what half or more of a normal wood, or whatever normal wood means. I have literally no idea what that means. What is the density that we assumed? Yeah, 500 is what we put for it, so it's a fifth. And then last fact, which Google will tell me because it's so nice. Balsa wood density is 120 to 160. No, I mean balsa wood. It's not too far off balsa.
So it's balsa
so
wood,
at least, yeah, it's like a little. I mean, because it's a feather tree, it has to be a little bit. Like I was saying, I mean, that may be what I did in retrospect. Although the number 100 is also just a nice round number, but I may have looked at balsa wood and be like, let's just make that a little lighter.
So the final question I have on this very long list, which I can't believe we've actually made it through, is: have you been playing any games recently that you think might be good inspiration for directions to take Dwarf Fortress? If so, is there any standout examples?
Oh no, no, I mean, it's just that Dwarf Fortress is so spoken for now in terms of like the next 10 years, right? That I haven't thought about the games I've been playing that way. In any way, like I played, like I was saying, I played Caves of Qud, and I mean, Caves of Qud obviously has its own aesthetic, but it's not exactly transferable. Its own stuff. Played Drox Operative 2 a bit. Tried Rift Breaker. Finished the Pathfinder game. Nah, it's just not.
Nothing current.
Nothing I played recently really enters into it. I mean, if you go back far enough, when I was playing more of those automation type games, like we were talking about Dyson Sphere program and stuff. I mean, obviously that's not directly transferable, but like Dwarf Fortress has the feeling that, I mean, obviously because it's kind of part of that genealogy, right? Like the Minecraft into Redstone into Factorio into all the Factorio spin-off games. Is that the right genealogy? I don't know. But because Dwarf Fortress fits into that, it has grids, 3D grids, and
Some sort of a
etc.
factory feel.
Yeah, I mean it has, and we have like rollers and mine carts and things. I mean that is something that could be done, although it's not. I mean, it just doesn't feel right for the game in a lot of ways. But um, like people have done that too, right? They made computers, right? And you know, if that, but I haven't, yeah, I haven't felt directly inspired to do anything along those lines. I mean, we've been idly speculating about like since Dwarf Fortress sucks in all our game ideas anyway, like
Yeah.
how could Dwarf Fortress mimic a modern game? How could Dwarf Fortress mimic a sci-fi game when we get to like these myth and magic things? And then you think of like, well, I mean, you could, especially when you get boats in, and then you start doing some kind of spell jammer thing or something. Then you're like, well, it's all there. You could do it. And so we have thoughts along those lines, but I wouldn't tie them to any specific game I played recently.
Gotcha. Well, I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season, and hopefully you get a break at some point in there, at least briefly. And hopefully the rains don't flood you guys like they flooded us. It seems like
Yeah,
my
who
internet
knows?
was fine, which has been good.
You know, I don't know if anybody's mentioned this, but like just a week ago, like I had a tornado warning on my phone. And you had a tornado up there at some point, right?
Yeah, there was things thrown around by wind, not super close to me, but close enough to me that it was concerning.
Yeah, I mean, like our radar detected rotation in this storm front that was headed toward us, and I got a warning on the phone saying to run into my basement. Of course, we don't have basements around here, and especially I'm like I'm in an apartment above the ground floor. It's like not a helpful warning. And then we saw like we looked out one window and it was perfect blue skies, and we looked out the other way and there was like this hellish black front coming toward us. And then, you know, my parents live, you know, not too far from here, and like Zach's partner lives not too far from here. Like he was over here doing work, and they both called us. They're like, or not called us, they texted, whatever people do these days. And they're like, there's dime size hail falling all over us. And then there was these lightning striking all over the place. Fortunately, no tornado, as far as I know, materialized. But like the warning was in just a little rectangle, and we were in the center of the line.
Oh boy.
And yeah, no, it felt like there's going to be a tornado because there's been tornadoes here. There's a water spout in 1991. Port Orchard had a tornado, which is not far from here at all. Three something years ago. And so it's in the realm of possibility. And that freaked me out because I'd never been in a tornado warning. I've been in a couple hurricanes, but I've never been in a tornado before.
This reminds me of a photo a viewer of mine from Kansas sent me a couple of months ago when I was talking about earthquakes, and how he was saying that, well, earthquakes aren't as scary as tornadoes. I was like, I don't know about that. And then he sends me a picture of like his house. He's like, this is my house right now, and it's him and his wife mowing the lawn, and then like, I don't know, 400 meters behind them, there's a tornado. Not a big one, but a tornado.
Yeah, no, that's no. To me, that's why I don't live out there. I live here because we're just like waiting for the mountain to explode, and we'll all go, and it'll be fine.
It'll be
but
fine.
It's like in the next 50,000 years, right? Not like every year,
just constantly. But yeah, no, yeah. This is the time where I'm gonna say that I think I've taken enough of your time for today. So thank you very much, as always, for taking the time to do these conversations and answer questions from the community and hang out and chat with me. And shout outs to chat for being awesome and submitting these questions via Reddit and the YouTube video that I posted. So
yeah, I had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Cheers. Thanks for spending time. I'm gonna take us out now. If you want to say goodbye, do that now before I click the button.
Follow the ball.
Bye, chat. Oh my god, you made it to the end. Well, I just have to give you a big old pat on the back and say congratulations, because that's the longest one of these I've ever done, believe it or not. I decided to not do a little intro blurb this time because, believe it or not, one or two people complained about the last one, so decided to just dive right in. I kind of needed the audio warning on the last one, though, because of the scamps kind of falling off the table, but in this instance, we didn't, so that was nice. Scamps actually didn't make an appearance throughout the entirety of this, and I apologize for that. Although, I will say that I'm actually really happy with how this interview turned out. If you want to see more of these, I've done a couple of them in the past. There's a playlist in the description of this video. If you would like to support Dwarf Fortress, you can do that right now on their Patreon and directly through PayPal. Links are also in the description. Lastly, if you liked this video and want to see more of it, and you want me to do this full time, chat decided to obliterate my brain right now, but in the description, I also have a Patreon. You're seeing my patrons on the screen now. They pay my bills and keep this channel funded, so thank you very much for letting me do what I do and interview people and talk to people. And maybe if you like my interviews, you could check out the ones I've done with other developers. I did one with the developer of Rift Wizard very recently named Dylan White, and I think that it turned out quite well. Seriously though, Dwarf Fortress things are awesome. We'll do another one of these in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.